Enjoy early access to ad-free episodes each week when you subscribe to Wedding Planning Podcast Premium in Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show. I'm going to start today's episode with a story. My now husband John proposed in the summer of 2009 at the end of a 3-week trip that we took through 9 countries in Europe. We were in Paris, our last stop of the trip, and we waited for hours to get up to the lower platform of the Eiffel Tower, where John dropped to his knee with the sparkling lights of the tower above us and the lit up city buildings of Paris and riverboats out in the distance. We never even got to have dinner that night because it got so late, but you know how it is with the crazy excitement you felt on your engagement day. Dinner didn't even matter. We had just lived an incredibly powerful moment that was about to change our lives forever. Within weeks, my engagement ring was resized and it fit perfectly. We had shared the news with literally everyone we knew, and we started to have discussions about potential venues and dates, and of course, the elephant in the room, how we would actually pay for everything. Spoiler alert, these conversations weren't very productive, and we didn't have any breakthrough revelations other than just generally feeling like planning an entire wedding seemed really expensive, overwhelming, and exhausting. My mom and sister and my best friends were so excited and couldn't wait to start planning showers, parties, dress shopping trips, and fun wedding projects. But underneath all this buzz and excitement, there was that problem that started as a passing thought, but it was starting to grow bigger and harder to ignore. And this is when I realized 2 things. John and I had never really discussed or even thought about our wedding before we got engaged, and the actual logistics and finances of planning and hosting a wedding were already incredibly overwhelming. The cost of living in Southern California was, and still is, sky high. The 2 of us were working really hard to advance in our careers, and we had some money saved, but not a ton. And we definitely had no intention of going into debt to pay for our wedding. Thankfully, we're both very easygoing, flexible people by nature, and we were able to shift our vision away from trying to host 100 people at a traditional all-inclusive wedding venue, and we started thinking outside the box about ways that we could create a really unique experience for our loved ones that didn't look like every other wedding we had already been to. We wanted a celebration that wouldn't be over in a matter of hours and wouldn't require tens of thousands of dollars. We had the glimmer of a vision, but all of the actual logistics were still hanging over us like a big, heavy cloud. I honestly had no idea which way to turn other than to interview wedding planners to help us sort out the next steps, because basic, you have to hire a wedding planner, right? I met with a handful of planners who all walked very confidently into the Starbucks or the bar where we had set up our meeting, wearing high heels and ton of makeup and beautiful hairdos. Their portfolios are in their arm, ready to share with me. But despite all of this outward-facing professionalism, none of them were actually listening to me. I talked about all of our creative visions of fondue pots on small, intimate 4-top tables, about renting a giant mansion for a long wedding weekend, and having someone who could be there to organize and direct independently hired bartenders and servers. And I was met with blank stare after blank stare. Politely told that that wouldn't work because of A, B, and C reason, and had we considered cookie cutter venue D, E, and F, which works with preferred vendors X, Y, and Z. I can tell you for sure that the thought of paying someone thousands of dollars who literally had no interest whatsoever in our wedding vision was clearly out of the question for me. I came home literally crying because I was so frustrated after interviewing the 3rd planner on my list. She cut me off repeatedly. She actually laughed at my fondue idea, saying it would be impossible. She left me with a list of her preferred vendors and a deadline to decide by Friday, or else she was going to book another client. And the bow on top is that she came highly recommended to me by a friend, which made the entire experience even more disappointing. If you've ever met with a pushy vendor who's so obviously just trying to book up their calendar as fast as possible, you know exactly what it feels like to have your ideas dismissed and to be completely unheard. And in that moment, John and I were left with a choice. We could have eventually found an affordable enough venue, we could have chosen the cheapest meal option, and gone broke paying for a top shelf open bar, which incidentally was one of John's non-negotiable priorities. We could have scrapped and saved and charged a few things on credit cards to bring it all together in a wedding that wouldn't be the best of the best, and it definitely wouldn't be featured on any wedding magazines or blogs, but hopefully our friends and family wouldn't be too judgy and they would understand the financial constraints of treating 100 of your closest loved ones to a nice dinner, bottomless drinks, and dancing. We'd check off all the boxes, run through all the traditions, and at the end of the day, we would be married. After all, wasn't that the whole point? And in that critical moment, thank goodness we woke up and saw that no, that's not anywhere near the point. And I'm here sharing this all with you because it scares the hell out of me to think of how close we were to not following our vision and to just going through the motions, and I don't want that for you. And at the same time, it breaks my heart to think of how many engaged couples every single day are in the same position that we were, but who don't find the right resources and support and encouragement to follow their dream vision and then go on to design the wedding that they truly want. So in that pivotal moment, John and I took a giant leap of faith and committed to planning our wedding our way. To hell with the narcissist wedding planners, the cookie cutter checklists, the outdated traditions and expectations, or worrying what anyone else thought of our decisions. We got on the same page with this mindset and we had deep discussions about the things that were most important to us. And in the end, we rented a 7,000 square foot mansion. We did our own catering. Yes, we planned out, shopped for, and brought to life that giant fondue party that was so important to us. We spent 4 solid days and nights hanging out with our 75 closest friends and family, eating, drinking, dancing, talking, staying up late, laughing. And in the end, we did it all for around $12,000. Now, for transparency's sake, that was in 2010, so someone who's good at math and economics can adjust that number for inflation. But for the overall value and the priceless experience for everyone involved, I'm going to stand firm in saying that's pretty good. The couples who stopped listening to this game-changing series will likely stay stuck exactly where I was in the story I just told, after meeting with that awful third wedding planner. They'll do exactly what most of us do and freak out over how much there is to do, how much things cost, and how complicated and hard it feels to go off the beaten path. And they'll fall back to the status quo wedding planners, the big corporate websites, and free checklists to plan a cookie cutter wedding for them without ever knowing the priceless opportunity that has slipped away. The opportunity to design the wedding that you actually want and to share a once-in-a-lifetime experience with your loved ones that leaves a lasting sense of connection for decades to come. And to miss out on that is quite simply heartbreaking. And the keys to successful stress-free planning that we reviewed in episodes 1 and 2, if you just take those 2 into account, but you're not doing what we're going to review in today's episode, then it will all still fall flat. It's just like cooking. I can give you all the ingredients, but if I don't tell you what temperature to set the oven, how long to cook it, or what to mix with what, then it's just not going to turn out right. The new way to plan your dream wedding that we're reviewing here in this series is not only going to help you focus on your top priorities and tune out the noise, it's also going to show you exactly how to put it all into action so that you're not drowning in doubt and overwhelm and guesswork over the next few months. Best of all, when you follow the 3-part wedding planning framework that I've created for you, you get to bring your dream wedding to life free from overwhelm, distractions, and guesswork. You can actually enjoy a stress-free engagement, stay within your set budget, and have your guests leave your wedding thinking that was the most unforgettable wedding that we've ever experienced. You and your partner deserve to live every single moment of your engagement in a state of growth, of joy, and abundance that extends beyond your wedding and into the rest of your lives. But if you don't prioritize what we're covering here and you just think, okay, cool, we've got it all and we can totally take it from here and do it on our own, you're not going to see the full results. Most couples are not aware of the hidden inner work, the secrets to consistency, and the massively powerful effect that continued support and guided expertise has in helping you navigate the hundreds of decisions that you'll have to make between now and your wedding day. Remember my story about the crossroads of the quote normal way to plan a wedding and the completely unknown? I can't even imagine if John and I had turned away from our wedding vision that we were so excited about and taken the quote easy route. It was scary and it felt stressful at the time, but you know what's a million times scarier than that? The thought of going through the motions and having our wedding blend in with every other wedding that you and I have ever been to, and it all being over and done with in just a few short hours. Oh yeah, and being stuck with the bill for years to come. Put very simply, I want you to actually enjoy your engagement free from stress and overwhelm, and to create a meaningful and affordable wedding experience that's unlike any that your loved ones have ever been to. And the best part is, it's not that hard. I have an incredibly simple 3-step framework that's available for any engaged couple to take advantage of, no matter what city you live in, what your budget is, or how long you have to plan everything out. And this isn't like hiring a wedding planner with contracts and deposits and balances due and a limited number of phone calls and emails. No. You deserve a convenient, accessible, and affordable way to get the wedding advice and information that you need when and where it works for you. And so we come to the third key to stress-free planning, which is that the most happy, fulfilled, engaged couples have on-demand access to a comprehensive, down-to-earth, and practical library of strategic wedding tips, tricks, support, and advice. This is the tactical stuff, the strategy behind planning a wedding. Choosing the best vendors, setting and sticking to a budget, knowing how much to tip people, protecting yourself with airtight contracts. We're going to do things a little bit differently here in episode 3, and I'm going to share the top 3 mistakes that I see couples make when it comes down to their planning strategy and to making the big, important wedding decisions. The first is one that we've touched on a few times throughout this series, and it's relying too much on generic wedding checklists and free planning guides. Look, I know it's really tempting when you're busy and stressed and you have no idea what you're doing to turn to Google and look for an easy answer, to follow a checklist so that you don't have to waste time guessing, researching, and thinking about it. But that's a problem because generic wedding checklists don't actually speak to your unique priorities, and worse, they will encourage you to overspend and to include a bunch of things that might not even be important to you. Remember Jen from episode number 2? She never took the time to sit down with her fiance and to talk about their shared vision of what their wedding would look like or what their priorities were. They just assumed that they would host a quote normal traditional wedding. So Jen used a normal traditional wedding checklist that she found online, and she got $12,000 into debt over a cookie cutter wedding that they realized after it was too late they never even wanted in the first place. Wouldn't it make so much more sense to have your own personalized wedding checklist full of the things that are important to you and to save your time, money, and energy by forgetting all the rest? You wouldn't go online and search for a shopping checklist before you go to the grocery store, or else you'd come home with bags of food that you'll never even use. My grocery list is very different from yours, just like our wedding checklist should be. The second mistake I see couples make all the time is rushing into plans before truly pausing to see the big picture. In other words, they commit to really big wedding decisions too soon before exploring all of their creative options. You wouldn't ever just willy-nilly set out from California on a road trip to Maine without first making a custom map to follow. And everyone's roadmap will be unique and completely different. Maybe one couple literally just wants to get to Maine on the fastest route with the least stops, but another couple wants to visit all 48 states along the way. Neither is the quote right way, but if you don't take a moment to acknowledge and explore your options and you just start driving, you could be missing out on a ton of priceless memories and adventures along the way. I worked with a couple last year who got engaged and just days later booked the all-inclusive wedding venue in their town before even considering how many other creative and more affordable possibilities they really had. They moved so fast because, as the bride put it, and this is her quote, "We literally never even considered anything else," which makes me sad because looking back and knowing now everything that you've shared over the past months, I can see that we easily could have done something much more unique and memorable for a lot less money. And the last big, really expensive mistake that couples make is not being realistic about their budget and about how much things actually cost. They miss out on smart ways to maximize their money, and they fail to account for unforeseen expenses. What you don't know can cost you a ton of wasted money, and when you're guessworking within a set budget, a swing of $1 or $2 or $3 or even $5,000, that can mean the difference between enjoying a 2-week honeymoon, yay, or having a $500 credit card payment for the next 8 years. And I definitely don't want that for you. The Wedding Planning Podcast and this bonus series is not about the steps to creating a cookie cutter wedding or giving you a generic wedding checklist to follow. It's not about reciting the top ways to save money on your wedding or the easiest DIY projects or the top wedding playlists. It's not about what's cheaper, sheet cakes or cupcakes, or what a guest expert wedding planner thinks this year's hottest new trends are. If you really want to know the answers to those things, you can open up the internet and find literally millions of articles and posts. What we're talking about here, this is so much more. It's a new way to plan that happy, intentional couples are using to design weddings that reflect their vision, their priorities, and their unique personalities. It's how couples like Kate and John and Lauren and Mel have used their engagement season and their weddings to create deeper connections with one another, a deeper understanding of who they are and who they want to be. As we wrap up episode number 3, you now have the 3 keys to a stress-free, fulfilled engagement season. But how do you actually use these keys to plan out your wedding? Where do you start in identifying the things that are keeping you feeling stressed out and overwhelmed? How exactly do you pinpoint your values and priorities? And more importantly, how do you meaningfully incorporate them into your engagement season and your wedding celebration? Are there huge time and money savers buried deep in all the planning logistics that you're just not seeing? Are there fresh ways of seeing your wedding options in a new light that opens up an entire new world of possibilities and options? All of those answers will come along with so much more in the next episode. But right now, you have an exciting opportunity. You know that there are countless hidden components that go into an unforgettable wedding experience that most couples can't see. And that's why the majority of engaged couples stay trapped in a cycle of stress, overwhelm, and doubt throughout their entire engagement season. They panic about their budget, they dread getting quotes from vendors, they stress over the cost of favors and flowers and cake. They make decisions not because it's what they actually want, but just to get it over with. They feel constantly judged by their family and friends and compare themselves and their weddings to strangers on TikTok and Instagram. It's also why most people will listen to this series, take some of the ideas we've reviewed, try it out on their own, but fall back to the only thing they know. They fall right back into that free checklist mentality, spending way too much money and time on a bunch of wedding crap that's not even that important to them. And worse, they wind up an overwhelmed, stressed out mess, planning an overpriced wedding that looks exactly like the one we've all been to over and over again. They can't connect the ideas that we've reviewed together on a deeper level, but that doesn't have to be you. Tomorrow in episode number 4, we're going to tie everything we've reviewed together in a complete, done-for-you 3-step framework so that you can have the stress-free, streamlined, and confident wedding planning experience that you deserve. Thank you so much for being here today, and we'll talk again tomorrow.